Hello everyone and welcome to the Getting Started with CPA PEP webinar. The time is now approximately 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, and I'd like to welcome you to the webinar. Before we get started, I'd just like to do a quick sound check to see if you're able to hear me. Let me just quickly type out hello. So many of you may know that you do have the ability to communicate with me directly through the chat. It's either at the bottom or the right side of your screen currently. So if you are able to hear me, can you hear me? Can you see the screen? If you're able to hear me, if you can see, please do let me know and we'll get the process started from here. So please do let me know if you are able to follow along. And if you are, we'll get the process going from here. Okay, perfect. So it looks like people are able to hear me. Is anyone else not able to hear me? Okay, great. So it looks like people are able to hear. Wonderful. If you are not able to hear or see, please use Google Chrome. Google Chrome. Okay, I'm just going to type out a quick message because we're getting some people that are unable to tune in. And I just want to make sure everyone's able to follow along with us for today. So let's just see if we get more people that say yes. And in general, if for those of you that have just joined us, welcome. We're just doing a quick sound check before we go live and before we get started. Just going to see if more people. Okay, so great, wonderful. Alrighty. So there are a few technical issues going on, but I do feel that they will be resolved. Please try another browser. Oh, it's okay. Alrighty. So why don't we get started? Hey, it looks like the majority of you are here and you are able to follow along, which is great. I'd like to welcome you to the Getting Started with CPA PEP webinar. This is a really good webinar for someone who's just trying to plan what to do over the next few months, or if you're writing the 2018 CFE, what you're supposed to do for the next 9 months or so. Okay, so what I'd like to do is to break down exactly what you need to do. And I've gone ahead and tried to piece together really good information on how to prepare. Okay, so what you'll notice today is this webinar will be free. I think it's important. And I just wanted to make sure that as many people as possible come out to an event like this, just so we can plan together. And irrespective of what your current plans were, I'd like to just kind of show you what I think you should be doing to pass on the first try. Even if it's not your first try, try to follow along with some of my schedules and some of my ways of studying to ensure that you pass this time around, okay? So I will do anything possible to help you understand how to succeed here and how to do really, really well. So with that, I'd like to welcome you. Quick disclaimer, this is your session leader for today. I'm Mike Katzman. Previously, I was a comprehensive marker in the National Marking Center for CPA Canada, which means that I mark the final exams. Okay, so now known as the CFE, previously known as the UFE. That was my marking background. Okay, I did a lot of professional marking. Under contract, I was an independent contractor for them. I was also involved with York University's Atkinson program for a while and taught for my old firm for E&Y. My work experience, worked again for CPA Canada, for E&Y, and the Office of the Auditor General. Okay, so currently I'm the course director at PrepFormal. So I just wanted to share my background, and I'm also a practicing accountant. I have, I'm a CPA. Also have a public license, an LPA, a license to practice in Ontario, although I don't really practice. but I do feel like it's important to maintain. Okay, so why don't we get right into it? Okay, and by the way, for those of you that I guess have already started listening to this, I think you now know that you can communicate with me through the chat. Okay, if you've just joined us, at any point in time, you can send me a message through the chat, and you're all welcome to communicate with me and drop down any questions which you may have. I would be happy to help. So let me first start off with some of the basics. Let's first kind of assess where are you in the process. So let me just type out this question. Please state your answer in chat. Are you starting in Core 1? In Core 1, are you writing the 2018 CFE? Let me know where you're at currently. I'm just kind of curious, or something else, or another elective, or another core or elective. Where are you currently within the process? Just so I can kind of tailor the presentation a little bit. I'd like to just make sure that we're all on the same page, and I'd like to make sure that everyone's kind of follow along. So where are you currently within the process? Please do let me know as part of the live chat. I would be happy to then kind of customize the presentation to, to make sure we are getting the maximum output. All right, the maximum learning. Okay, so let's see. Core 1 next semester, January, planning the CFE in 2018. Core 1, Core 2, writing the CFE. Okay, great. So it looks like, we've kind of got a bunch of different people starting, right? Writing assurance, CFE 2018. Okay, lots and lots of people who are doing the CFE. Okay, great. So as I suspected, there's a lot of people who are writing the CFE here, but at the same time, there's some people who are doing the cores and the electives, which is great. So I think this presentation will cater to everyone, and we'll focus on how to strategize. Okay, so my role is to teach you how to, I guess, strategize in a slightly different way than what you've done before. So just kind of hear me out. I'll explain why I teach it, like in a certain way. So first of all, let me just kind of get started and say not all CPA markers are created equal. Okay, so your facilitators, if you've written a professional exam previously, or if you've not, if you're going into Capstone 1, or if you're going into Core 1 and you don't really quite understand the process very well, CPA Canada hires two different types of groups of people. Okay, there's facilitators who essentially teach you content, and there's markers who mark your exams. Now, currently there is an independence barrier between markers and facilitators. So when you get advice from your facilitator and they say, well, this is going to be on the exam, or I really think that you should practice the following, it's very, very challenging for you to say, yes, that person's correct or not, because chances are, because of the independence rules, that person may have never marked professionally for CPA Canada. Now, specifically talking about my marking background and my marking experience, I was never a facilitator. I never taught for CPA Canada. I was strictly a marker. And the way that professional marking works is it's a small group of people. On my case, it was very small. We had a tiny team. When I was at that time marking the final exam, we had about 100 people Canada-wide that would mark every single paper across Canada, really. So if you consider how many papers that is, and if you also consider the fact that each question paper is double marked, what you'll notice is markers work very long hours, and we're on a very tight contract. Okay, so all work is contract work. We're there for 14 or 15 nights, stuck in a hotel. At least in my day, it was like, you're stuck in a hotel. You're marking in a computerized environment, and we work on a quota system. So I have to pump out a specific number of cases per hour, or I fall behind. Okay, so again, and there's nothing wrong with that. Management accounting teaches you to make sure that that your labor is productive, and I was that labor. I was that hired labor. So essentially what I try to teach and what we teach at PrepFormal is more the basics and best practices of what you should do to stand out to the marker. Okay, so it's not necessarily about how much content you know. It's not really about kind of even how much you've studied. It's all about consistency. And it's all about having a methodical approach to writing every single case, because chances are, even if you go through any prep program, or even if you just take the materials, you will likely never see the same case again. Okay, so when you write a specific case as a practice case, you will never see that case on the professional environment. And lots of people kind of think, hey, if I do a large enough sample size, I might figure out what's on the exam. Not really the case. Okay, so if you look, year after year after year, things do change. So what's important is to have some sort of a unique format, like a unique, approach for how to do it. And after being in the marking center, I mean, it's no secret, after seeing thousands of papers, you see trends. You see what are really, really, good practices that I can share. One last thing that I wanted to really mention today, you write, many of you know that you write your exams on a computer. Okay, so you type them out. But what a lot of people don't really realize is they're also marked on a computer as well. Okay, so it's not like CPA Canada prints off every one of your question papers. They literally just, set up a computerized environment. I press one button because I'm an English marker. So my button says English EN, or like next EN, right? And I get the next question paper. I don't see anything about you. It's completely anonymous. And it's completely computerized, which also means your computer formatting needs to be at a very high level. You need to make sure that you're underlining and bolding things correctly. Anyway, you kind of get the point. Here's my marking center card. Okay, I found one of my old ID cards. I couldn't find any other ones because people lose these things. And believe me, this photo was taken before working 14 hours a day for 15 nights straight, which, by the way, is an actual marking schedule. So my advice to you is let's plan and let's build some consistency so you make my life easier in the marking center later. Okay, so here's some information about PrepFormal. I'll kind of skim through it. I want to kind of get right to the point. We work with candidates one-on-one across Canada. Our work is anonymous. We don't report to CPA Canada. We are independently certified as a designated post-secondary educational institution, and approximately 2,000 candidates in Canada used our program in the past 12 months. That's more than any other program, and we average approximately anywhere from 20 to 50,000 site visits per month. So here's our staff. So it's not just Mike. There's lots of work that goes into making sure that everything functions properly. So here's kind of we work on a team of experienced CPAs and accounting educators who all have their designation. That's one key thing about PrepFormal. We don't work with any marker, unless they are a CPA with educational experience. Okay, so we don't take in recent CFE writers. We don't believe that they're qualified enough to teach you and to provide you with the right experience to pass. So just a few sample bios. Of course, I've omitted names for privacy reasons, but tenure prof in accounting, CPA, CA, CFE, National Center marker. You can probably guess who that is. Actually, we have several. CPA CA 14 years at a Big Four with the UFI program coordinator, helped with over 1,000 CPAs personally. CPA Canada tax specialist responsible for developing tax curriculum and previous exams. Masters of Accounting, CPA CA, published author by Thomson Reuters, tax lecturer, top SOI writer in Ontario. Collectively, we've helped thousands of CPA candidates achieve their designation. So here's kind of what I want to really talk about. I just want to explain that the process is not designed to be fair. Like in addition to solving the questions that you're doing, a lot of what you'll have to do is focus on something called the enabling competencies. Now, these are big words, but basically what they mean is, in addition to any technical information, which you'll do or you'll solve, you kind of have to tie in information or tie in the point. So, for example, if you're trying to decide between an operating and a capital lease, you might want to think about the user impact. Okay, that's what enabling competencies means. It kind of just goes broader, above and beyond what you normally find. Try to see whether, say, a loan covenant would be affected by by that decision between an operating and a capital lease. Okay, so that's kind of like the whole idea. And number two, the exam questions, both multiple choice for the cores and your electives, along with the cases, will be designed in such a way that they might feel like they're not standardized. Okay, so I often get people that say, "Hey, my exam was so different. I have no idea what happened there." It's not usually the case. Okay, so someone who may be unsuccessful and then trying the program for the second time around, or someone that reaches out to us after they failed, that's one of the common concerns that I get from when I talk with people. Hey, I was so surprised by this exam. There's nothing to be surprised about if you approach it with a methodical approach. Okay, so these are case writing focused exams. There's a unique style of writing, and you should expect a certain amount of, writing, and you should expect to organize your responses with preferably a computer-based outline. Also, what you should know is these are heavily standardized. Okay, so all core and elective exams, including the 2018 CFE, is extremely standardized. Okay, it might not seem to be the case, but they're very standardized in a sense that they pack in so much information that you will run out of time. So it's not about necessarily trying to provide depth. Okay, a lot of people are really interested in cramming in as much information as possible, but the big challenge on these exams is that it's virtually impossible for you to actually do them on time. That's a huge challenge. So let's talk about kind of some of the basics behind CPA PEP. Okay, so for those of you that are starting in Core 1, I'll just quickly skim through this information. Okay, so for anyone who's doing like the challenge exams, for example, or kind of going into Core 1, I'll just kind of show you some of the key areas. If you have any questions, please do let me know. I would be happy to help. For anyone that's kind of already past this point, I promise I'll take a few seconds and we'll move on to other topics. Okay, so for anyone who's doing Core 1, it's really important for you to understand the content coverage. So the majority of the exam will be financial reporting, but that doesn't mean that the entire section which you should study is FR, short for financial reporting. You should focus on other areas as well. Again, because the exams are tend to integrate subjects between, say, a decision to capitalize your lease and, say, the impact on audit or the impact on tax. Okay, so the point is, don't just immediately say, I'm not going to do anything in audit, or I'm just going to not study finance. Okay, you should study for everything. Also, the opposite actually works for the formatting. Okay, so while the majority of the content will be FR linked, what you'll notice is the multiple choice should take you 75% of the exam. Okay, so 3 out of 4 hours will be the multiple choice. But what's kind of deceiving is the number one reason why I see people fail Core 1 is because of the case portion. Mainly because I find people run out of time on the case portion and they take too much time. So remember on the previous slide we talked about these exams are designed in such a way that you will run out of time. Okay, so if this is your first time writing, what you'll notice is you will run out of time and you'll probably go over the time limit provided for the multiple choice. So the question is, do you want to be rushing through a major part of the exam like the case and not have enough time? This is why I tend to suggest for you to do the case first, okay? So, because I find about 70% people who fail, and not to be a pessimist, but I mean, my role is to understand why people fail. Generally speaking, it's because of case writing. Just to show you, we get lots of emails, and this is an actual email. It is not me paraphrasing. This is an actual email where someone got, not just, it didn't just pass, but they also got competence with distinction by working, in this case, with me directly. But basically, I just want to, really explain that I think it's very possible, if you play this game right, to be, very methodical with your response. So how do you become more methodical? You focus on going after the most tested areas. And you get really good at the most tested areas. If you understand the topics covered here, on the left side of your screen, you'll see a bunch of topics, okay? Revenue recognition, IT control deficiencies, materiality, audit planning, financial statement, income to income tax payable, personal taxes, business valuations, specifically DCF, right? Discounted cash flow, and capital assets and intangible assets. If you understand kind of these core areas, what you'll find is this will probably account for 70 to 80% of your exam. It's impossible for you to know everything on the exam, but if you know most of the commonly tested areas, which continue to reappear all the time, it's really important to kind of know them, just so you can do very, very well going forward. Okay. The key is also not to memorize technical. The best writers, okay, and I always get this question: how do I prepare? Do I go after notes, or do I do something else, or do I do practice questions, or do I blend? That's a very personal question. That's a very personal decision. But my advice to you in general is to really do as many practice questions and practice cases as possible, because this would simulate your exam environment. We have lots of practice cases and practice questions for you to try on the site. You'll also notice that, within PEP, your scores, your multiple choice scores will probably be very low. That's normal. You're no longer doing prep, or you're no longer part of a university environment. Okay, this is the professional kind of level. Things will be very difficult. So don't get too worried. Don't get discouraged if it's not what where you normally score. If you're scoring like a 60 and you're a 90 student, it's not a big deal. Okay, in fact, that's pretty normal. So just to kind of don't be too hard on yourself. But the idea is to then debrief by learning the questions, right? Going back, assessing your answers, and then kind of figuring out where to go from there. Similarly, for Core 2, the focus changes to management accounting. You've got a bunch of management accounting stuff. You've got a little bit on strategy and governance. And then the other two areas, finance and FR, you should be very comfortable with. One of the challenges that I see here is Core 2 is remarkably similar from a formatting perspective. But one of the big challenges is a lot of Ontario and Canadian-based universities don't really teach management accounting at a very in-depth level. So what you'll find is Core 2 is based on subjects that you probably haven't really focused on. So I find that to be the biggest challenge. And similarly, again, these are the most tested topics for you to work with. Okay, ratio analysis, operational budgets, cost classifications, costing methods, purchase or selling decisions, SWOT analysis, foreign currency transactions, and earnings per share. Okay, so a few helpful tips. Practice splitting your time between the numerical, right, the quantitative part of your response, and your qualitative. Okay, and also practice on kind of getting right to the point. What I'm going to share at the end of the webinar is I just want to quickly kind of show you something that I decided to create for you. So for anyone who's doing the Core 1 exam, it's really important for you to stay organized. And, many of you know that at PrepFormal, we provide a custom schedule for students going through the program. So for anyone who's doing, for example, Core 1, I often get people that ask me, what does a schedule kind of look like? What can I expect to see? What would be an optimal thing for me to do? So what I decided to basically do is put together a schedule for Core 1 for someone who's just starting within the process. I'm happy to provide this to you as well. But if you're part of the program, again, we do customize this for students. So let me just kind of walk you through what you might see on the schedule. So on the very first column, you'll see a bunch of dates. Anything that's kind of highlighted, like this is a weekend. Okay. You've got webinar and live classes here. You've got morning cases and afternoon cases if you want to do both. You've got technical review. You have marked cases or one-on-one coaching where you can put like X, for example, for you to, decide which cases are marked. So technical review and one-on-one and all this stuff gets populated by your marker. They can also adjust some of the cases, right? And they can tell you what to write. And you'll notice that all of the webinars are pre-populated for you to watch. And we will methodically go through every subject that I think you should know before Core 1. So you'll notice that it's, a lot of the same subjects that I described as some of the core topics are things that we'll be talking about in the future, okay, and future webinars. So just to let you know, this is the current schedule for webinars. This is what it would look like. This is sort of what it would be. It'd be a Tuesday and Thursday night. Here's an entire breakdown, and this takes you all the way up until the actual exams. Okay, there is also a quick Core 1 review found here, which will kind of wrap up the entire section. And by the way, there's a Core 2 review as well. Now, a schedule like this is also available for all of the different electives. So, but I just wanted to at least show you kind of what this would look like. Now, what I also want to show you is this portion over here. It's really important for you to see kind of how you mark your own responses. So you've got kind of like these technical competency areas, right? You have your enabling, you have your strategy and governance, you have your management, accounting, finance, and tax, etc. When you receive and when you see a certain case, what you should do is plot in your mark that that you receive and put like an RC, for example, for revenue recognition, for any other accounting issues, etc. For your cases, and this will prove to be a very good visual guide. When you do finish a case, you can also award yourself a specific mark and see whether you believe that you would have passed or not by adding in like a total point value. So for C's and RC's, there's different points available, and then you would mark yourself on some of the levels. And by the way, I'll talk about these levels in a second, but basically this is not just a schedule. This is a master tool for you to work and share with your assigned CPA marker, so you can work together to break down cases and to help you be a more methodical writer. Nothing here is guesswork. Nothing here is all about being shocked by information. This is all about consistency. And the point of the schedule is for you to continuously kind of, go back. So if you want to work with us, this is what you'll get. You'll have a consistent understanding that every Saturday you'll write a case. Okay, I know you're probably working. I know you're doing a bunch of other stuff. But you'll write a case, you'll submit it. You'll also have these weeknights, these webinars. These webinars also are recorded, so you can go back and you can check them out. Now, later on in the process, I'll show a CFE schedule, which is actually a little bit different than the Core 1 schedule. I've also prepared one of those. So, but for now, let me just kind of go back. I just wanted to quickly show you what I had in mind, and we'll go from there in a second. Okay, so now that we went past and discussed some of the Core 1 and Core 2 materials, what I wanted to cover is some of the electives. Basically, there's 4 electives for you to pick from. If you're challenging, you must do assurance and tax. But generally speaking, there's also performance management and finance available. What you'll notice is the structure of the exams changes pretty significantly. You all of a sudden have a lot less multiple choice and 2 cases on the exam. Okay, so specifically, say the assurance elective focuses on the application of the Canadian auditing standards. Through case writing, it does not really focus on technical standards, right? So no one's going to ask you to recite CASIs. Same with tax, right? It's going to be very tax heavy. So here's kind of where we get to the next stage. Now, by the way, any questions up until this point? I'm just going to pause here for 2 seconds. I want to see if there's any questions at all before we get started. Let me know if you have. Okay, perfect. So it doesn't look like there's any question, so far. Great, wonderful. So why don't we get started with some Capstone 1 materials, okay? So let me explain what Capstone 1 is. I'll kind of tell you what you need to know, and we can go from here. Many of you already have heard of some information about. By the way, someone's asking about this study plan for the CFE. As I mentioned, I'll be doing the CFE plan in a second. So just kind of hold on for 2 seconds, and I'll get right to this. And for anyone who's asking from whom, it's your assigned CPA marker. Within PrepFormal, you are assigned a CPA marker. They will provide you with a schedule that kind of looks like this. Okay, so that's who would provide this to you. Okay, so again, Capstone 1, basically Capstone 1 is a very large group project. You spend time in a workshop getting oriented and you're there to solve a fairly large, problem. It's an assignment, and then you're there to present. If you do the presentation, if you do all the submissions, then you will proceed. The point of Capstone 1 is to essentially teach you very different skills, and not necessarily to focus on, typical CPA PEP skills. Okay, so Capstone 1 will not actually teach you how to do better on the exams. So that's really one of the challenges, that Capstone 1 is teaching you how to do, how to be a better group worker from a case perspective. It doesn't necessarily go into how to pass exams. That's one of the big challenges. Capstone 2 teaches you a little bit about case writing. Okay, so forces you to do 7 to 8 weeks of case writing. Many of you may have seen these dates already. So my role is just to explain some of the basics behind Capstone 1 and 2, but also to suggest that you should be spending most of your extra time practicing additional cases. Okay. Someone, by the way, is asking me a quick question. Are you going to talk more about the electives 2 in more detail? Please do let me know what if you have any questions so far. I'm happy to try to explain anything that you have any questions about. So feel free to let me know, Mohammed. I would be happy to help. Then we kind of get into the Canadian CFE. Okay, so the final exam is basically the hardest exam in the process. It's 3 days in length. The first day is 4 hours. It's an extension of the Capstone 1 case. Day 2 is 5 hours, where it's a large case and it involves 4 different roles, 4 different elective roles. And day 3 is a combination of 3 short cases. Okay, many of you already know also that it's in September. I'll actually walk through a schedule in a second, but I just want to quickly explain. Again, day 1 is an extension of Capstone 1. Okay, many of you might know that. Now, one of the key things that I want to focus some time on is on day 2, you get a choice. Basically, think of day 2 as a large 30-page case, okay? And assume that there are 10 different things for you to do as part of this case, okay? They call them assessment opportunities. And some of those assessment opportunities will be common. Okay, just for simplicity, let's say that 5 assessment opportunities will be common for everyone, and then the other 5 will be based on your role. Now, what you'll find is the role is something that you pick ahead of time, and it would be similar to you picking elective roles the same way that you took electives. So it's the same 4 choices that are available to you: assurance, tax, finance, or performance management. Something that I often hear from students is they find it very challenging. They find it very difficult to select the role. I think it's important for you to understand a few things. First of all, if you graduated through CPA PEP and you challenged certain electives throughout PEP, okay, so if you did, say, assurance or tax as part of your, the 4 courses that you did previous to the CFE, at that point, I don't see a reason why you would not pick assurance or tax, okay? So for you to now go out and say, hey, I'm going to do PM or I'm going to do finance, would be pretty challenging from a strategic perspective. So I don't believe that it would be a really good idea, because the only thing that would change is you would make your life a whole lot more difficult. Now, for anyone who is an internationally trained accountant, or someone who's transitioning or transferring into the process and maybe is starting directly in Capstone 1, what you'll notice is you have no background. So you just have to pick one of these 4 roles, and you have no idea what to pick, which is a very different, answer. So let me just kind of say this. Let me just kind of explain a few things about the 4 options that are available to you. Assurance is kind of like, I would say, the most common role, mainly because it's required for public accounting. In the future, if you do want to practice public accounting, you have to pick assurance. So assurance is taken by the overwhelming majority of candidates who do public accounting for that reason, which does represent a pretty significant number of writers overall. Now, in addition to this, if people are not taking assurance, they now have options, with 3 other electives. In my experience, for people who don't go into the public accounting route, the most commonly picked elective would be performance management, mainly because it happens to kind of be a catch-all for people that don't know what role to take, and they don't quite understand what PM really is, and they just pick it because they see PM and it seems the easiest out of the bunch. In my experience, it has one of the lowest pass rates. Now, I don't know whether that's something to do with the bias of the type of candidate that goes into PM, or that it's actually more difficult. But what I do know is the pass rate is lower for PM. The pass rate for tax happens to be higher, because tax is very much black and white, and it's easier to kind of, maneuver your way out of a tax question. Finance is very rarely picked, so there's not a whole lot of information. And in my opinion, finance is a really bad option for most candidates, because the amount of time that it would take you to do a quant would be way longer than for you to write a paragraph. So given the fact that all roles are compared, you would be at a significant disadvantage by picking finance compared to doing assurance or tax, in my opinion, because finance is just so much more complicated to write about, okay? But you still have the same limited time. So I would say pick the easiest option. No one in 5 years will ask you, what elective did you take? They will just, look at your resume and say that you're a CPA, right? No one cares. Okay, day 3, 3 separate cases, anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes in length. Time management here is extremely crucial, right? Really, really important for you to do well. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, about the CFE. Similarly, I wanted to now share, before we get into the mistakes, and actually here, I'm getting a quick question here. Someone's asking, I'm writing assurance this winter. I'm wondering if you can give us a quick overview to pass the module. So assurance has a lot of application to it. It's really important for you to watch some of our webinars that deal with assurance. So we run, I think, 5 different webinars, from special engagements to internal controls versus procedures, to audit planning memos, to the CS review, right? The Canadian Auditing Standards, review, and plus, of course, the 20 or 30 financial reporting webinars. So it's all about having the correct formatting and the application. So I would say, as a first order of business, please check out our webinars that focus directly on assurance, and you'll do very, very well in the assurance elective. Okay. Okay. So as promised, I want to share the CFE schedule with you now that we kind of talked a little bit about, what this would look like. So I'm just going to quickly show you the CFE schedule. And wow, this is very small, like on your screen. So I'll just go ahead and make this a little bit larger just so you can follow along with me. Struggling with enlarging here. Okay, for some reason it doesn't want me to enlarge, okay, there we go. Perfect. Oh, wow. Okay, great. Can everyone see this? So what I wanted to put together is a schedule of what you should be doing if you're starting for the preparation process for the CFE, with a very clear explanation of where you want to go from here. What I've tried to allocate out are cases that would be linked to the individual topics that we're talking, at least somewhat, based on the actual webinar. So you'll notice that there's cases attached to a certain webinar for that week, and there's a different numbered case, right? So you do have access to all of these cases as a registered student. These are PrepFormal cases. They're not CPA candidate cases, and they are updated fully for the current process. So these would be done all the way up until the Capstone 1 workshop. Okay, so by the time that the workshop rolls around, you'll do a significant number of cases on your own, some of which will be marked by your marker. Okay, afterwards, you continue to write additional cases. In July, we have the CFE Live Review, which is a special 7-day session free of charge provided to any PrepFormal student. For 7 days, we'll teach you everything you need to know about doing well on the CFE. Then you have your Capstone 2 workshop in here. Then you have the entire plan for how many cases you should write. And before you know it, it'll be the CFE. So while it seems like there's a lot of time ahead, in fact, what this schedule should show you is it's really not that far away. And before you know it, this time will fly right by. Okay? So if you methodically start now, which I think you should, I think it's silly to wait until July, because every PrepFormal student, all 2,000 of us, will be writing starting in January. So would you rather get started later, or write an exam against someone who comes from our program who's written so many cases, or earlier, right? So the whole thing about this exam is you want to be extremely consistent. And my role is to enforce some of that consistency to make sure that everyone follows on time. Okay. So again, there's another mock schedule for the CFE. It is available. I'm also happy to share it with you. So please check this out. But my key message to you is, writing and passing the 2018 CFE should be very much based on consistency, right? Consistent writing and consistent application, and I'm happy to get you there. Okay, so the purpose of the session really is to share this planning document just so we're all sort of on the same page. Okay, I know you've got family stuff coming up sometimes. That's not the point. The point is, you can totally take time off, no problem. But as long as you're consistently writing, you're consistently doing stuff. And I will tell you from my end, you can see from that schedule previously shown that I will continue to run webinars. We will continue to prove, to you that you know your stuff, that you know all the content available, just to bring up that, some of that technical competence. And by virtue, increase your confidence as well and improve your case writing over time. Okay. what I last, I guess, wanted to share here is a little bit about how the exam is marked. Okay, so what I wanted to quickly cover are the top 7 mistakes that I saw in the National Marking Center. So here they are. Okay, so these are inconsistencies. So don't do these. The first one is lack of qualitative discussion within a quant. So sometimes people will spend way too much time giving me the right answer from a numbers perspective and won't explain why it's relevant, won't explain their adjustments, won't explain how it impacts their users, won't give me pros and cons of any decision. If you do this, you will fail. So don't do this. Number 2, sometimes I get really pretty Excel files, okay, with the bolding and the underlining, and they look absolutely stunning. They're beautiful. They could be put in a museum. Also, remember, this is a standardized exam. It's not necessarily something that I am interested in focusing on. I don't award you marks based on how pretty your Excel is. I'm looking for important information. And I know that the real world also discusses and looks at specifically kind of what you're supposed to do, right? Like the real world looks for some of, I guess, the key ways on how to, display information in the cleanest way possible. But also in the real world, you have all the time in the world for you to do this, right? So remember, you're not in the real world. You're doing a practice exam. Number 3, lack of a proper plan or outline. Okay. So for anyone who uses paper as an outlining method, you're already at a disadvantage. And if you don't use anything for your planning process, then you are at a grave disadvantage. Okay? So my suggestion for you is to try to plan your response, preferably using a computer. Number 4, no focus on big picture or users. So again, it's these type of kind of hollow discussions that don't really communicate the point of why something is important. Number 5, I would say, is improper formatting. So if you discuss WIR, WIR is something that's consistently used for describing, say, internal control weaknesses. So you'll say the weakness is the following, the implication is the following, and the recommendation is that I would say is blank. Okay, so assume that you use this format. What I often find is people do know these formats, but then they decide to dump all of their information into the W. Okay, or they talk about the recommendation as part of their W, as part of their weakness. Okay, bad, right? These are all things that I think really annoy the marker. Number 6, this is a fun one. Copying and pasting CPA Candidate handbook sections. While this is technically allowed, you want to make sure that you add in your own information so it's consistent and so we can actually, rely on it. I think that's really critical. And number 7, no overall conclusion. So for anyone that finishes an exam or a case and doesn't add a wrap up paragraph, you've missed an opportunity for very easy marks on the exam. For anyone who sometimes is wondering how the CFE is marked, there's basically 4 major levels. I do run an entire CFE webinar covering a lot of this stuff, so I'm going to kind of just push it to that webinar. It's free as well if you want to check it out. We ran it last week. You're welcome to tune in and see a little bit more about how the CFE is marked with these 4 levels. I often get this question, and by the way, we're going to wrap up this pretty soon. I just want to quickly just show you and talk about some common questions. I often get people say, how much time do you need to study for this? I would say you need approximately 250 hours before each exam. Okay, so given the fact that these modules and these exams test time management and specifically writing skills under time management, what you might find is it's really critical for you to do as much practice as possible so you feel comfortable before you proceed and before you go ahead. So when you are spending all this time practicing and learning stuff, I think that, the inflection point after which you feel a lot more comfortable with the materials, probably about 250 hours in my experience. Okay, I'm just, there's some sample multiple choice questions and cases that I wanted to explain. Here's some solutions. I'll upload this slide deck, and there's some more information about PrepFormal, but what I wanted to now do is show you a little bit about how to actually navigate the system and how to maximize everything that you get out of the program. So for anyone who is not yet registered, or if you've recently registered, I just want to quickly run through how to use the system. So you'll go ahead and you'll log in at the top right corner, right? There's going to be a login. And once you've logged in, you've kind of got a bunch of different, information and drop downs here. So this dashboard button is where you keep track of all of your courses, all the forums, all the webinars, etc. They're all available here. Your profile keeps track of your personal information, your grades, etc. You can also do a bunch of other things. You can see your grades. You can see messages. So people will send you messages, like other students can communicate with you. You can also communicate with your mentor the same way. You can adjust preferences. And here's your wallet credits, by the way. Basically, wallet credits are a site-wide currency used to get cases marked by your CPA marker that's assigned to you as part of the program. So when when you submit a case for marking, they will draw 1 credit from you, and it will appear kind of like this until you approve it. Okay, so once the case is marked to your satisfaction, you approve the marking, and a credit is released from your profile. All right. Many of you already also know that the upcoming webinars and the past webinars are free of charge for students. So if you are registered within a PrepFormal program, you'll notice that you can just click on webinars and click on, say, intangible assets. And even though it shows a price here, you can see that this is free for any PrepFormal student. So you could just hit register and it'll be added to your course free of charge. You don't have to pay the $57. And then the webinar becomes an upcoming event, which you'll get notifications about as part of your calendar. You can look for study buddies here. Okay, there's even some accounting jobs. All of the webinars become listed here, so you can go back and replay them at any point in time. There's webinar materials available. That's kind of what they look like, right? There's the actual recording available at any given point. Okay, and of course, at any point in time, you can reach out to us for any help. Core 1 materials themselves. This is what the Core 1 course kind of is broken up and sort of looks like. It's very similar to other courses. Basically, you've got some introduction areas teaching you some basics about how to get started, how to submit cases. It also talks about some of the core areas, so financial reporting, etc. These are like the common sections. Okay, it's recently updated, right? So we have all the recent updates, even some of the new standards for 2018, for example, IFRS 15. It's here. Okay, it's fully here. At the bottom of each technical standard, you have question banks. These are the multiple choice question banks. You can go ahead and solve them. Okay, there's the right and wrong answers. You have full mock exams, solutions, available here, study groups, and another 2 links for upcoming webinars. Okay. All right. So at this point, I'd like to say, again, as I mentioned, you do have the option to work with a practicing CPA with professional educational experience on a one-on-one basis. So we do provide a bunch of resources, really. Pretty much anything that you need, right, from live weekly webinars and to video lectures, to notes, to practice questions, etc. And we do stand behind all of our courses. A pass guarantee is provided with every course with ongoing access to materials until you pass. Okay, just want to kind of just share some more information. And at this point, again, I just want to say thank you for watching. The purpose of this webinar was to ensure that you have a clear idea about how to go from here. I know that we're just getting started for the next wave. Okay, for the next kind of, for anyone who's doing, say, Core 1 now or the next time around. And I just wanted to ensure that you understand how to use all the resources available to you, and you know how to access all of our webinars, that you continue to tune in with us, to learn with us. And in the meanwhile, if you have any questions, please do let me know as part of this chat. And I'll definitely let you know, and I'd be happy to help answer anything at all. So at this point, I'd like to see if there's anyone that has any questions at all. Richard saying, I would like to discuss your program with you at another time. Sure, no problem. Feel free to connect with me. I have provided my contact information on the final, on the final page here. Does anyone have any other questions? Any other questions at all? Does anyone have any questions about the schedules? I just want to see whether people are able to follow along and whether that's helpful for you. And as I mentioned, I do look forward to seeing all of you in the future. It would be great to have all of you come out to the future webinars, including the ones starting next week. Okay, so I don't really, okay, there we go. Al asks me, is there a number of cases that you're supposed to do to pass? I'm guessing that's kind of how this reads. So, my suggestion is to be consistent with cases. Okay, Al, my suggestion is just to be very consistent. It's critical to be more consistent and maybe do one case per week. Okay, that's what I would do. Mohammed, do we have to do all the cases listed on the schedule? No, and the point is not to overwhelm you, but again to remind you that consistency, that consistency is key. It's something that I highly recommend. Ganeet, if we're planning on writing core and elective, do we follow the core schedule or CFE? If you plan on writing, say core 1, then you should do the core 1 schedule for now, and then get an updated schedule for the next exam and kind of keep it to one schedule for now. Okay, so don't do the CFE schedule. You're not quite ready for it yet. But for now, I would request and I would follow like a core 1 schedule. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So it doesn't look like there's more questions. I'm going to leave my contact information. Feel free to connect with me if you have any questions at all. I'll also go ahead and post the slide deck that I've been running right now, along with some of these schedules. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to connect with me, and I would be happy to help you understand anything that we've covered tonight or anything that you think that you need help with. I would like to say thank you so much for coming out tonight, and please also do follow along and do attend our live class next Tuesday. We'll be running another another webinar, as we always do, twice a week going forward. Sorry, there's a few more questions here. Yimeng asks, if I register for a full package course now, but don't finish in 2018, can I keep learning in next year? Yes. So our full package access is provided until you become a CPA. So that could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, as long as you need. Okay, and we do continue to update all of our materials. So it's one fee until you become a CPA. Mohammed, so if we do cases on the schedule, will it use credits given at the course? Mohammed, it doesn't have to. So you can just write cases on your, on your own, and you don't actually have to submit every single case that you write. For you to request, for example, answers will not actually cost you any credits. You can just write cases on your own. So these are things that you want to discuss with your marker to say maybe, hey, Mohammed, let's write 4 cases in a row, and I'll mark the 5th one. You know what I mean? Or I'll mark the 3rd one, and then I'll mark the 6th one, etc. You're all very welcome. Some people are asking me about if I take Core 1 and 2 starting at the end of January, will you give a discount? Please feel free to send me an email, and I'd like to understand, first of all, why you want to do Core 1 and 2 at the same time. But I'd love to, Kamivi, please do reach out to me by email. Asif, Yimeng, you're all extremely welcome. Jenny, you're all very welcome as well. Again, if you have any questions at all, feel free to connect with me. Richard, is there a marker that is assigned to you for the full course? Yes. So every single student at PrepFormal is assigned a CPA marker on a one-to-one basis. And you work with that marker continuously until you pass the course. Okay, so it's the same person. It's not like, we don't do bulk marking. You are assigned one person. They work with you throughout the entire process. So they kind of get to know you. They know what you write like. And it just helps bridge the knowledge gap way more easily. You're all very welcome. Again, so thank you so much. Please do reach out, and please do connect at our next webinar next week at about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday. I do look forward to seeing all of you there. Thank you so much again, and have a wonderful evening. Take care.